The arena of the silent moons floated above the shattered planet like a crown of fire and metal, where alien civilizations gathered to witness dominance decided by combat. For centuries, the champion of the arena had been Zarthun the Crimson Blade, an alien warlord whose victories were carved into the bones of defeated worlds. He stood over 8 feet tall, with plated crimson armor fused to his skin and eyes that burned like dying stars. No challenger had survived more than 3 minutes against him. When the gates opened for the next match, the crowd roared, expecting another execution. Instead, a human girl walked onto the platform. She looked impossibly small, barely 16, with dark hair tied back and a simple combat suit bearing no insignia. Her name echoed weakly across the translators, Myra Hale of Earth. Laughter spread through the stands, alien nobles clicking their mandibles and flaring their crests in mockery. Earth was new to the galactic stage and already known for diplomacy, not combat. Zarthun lowered his blade and laughed, a sound like metal tearing. The girl merely looked up at him, calm and unreadable. What the crowd did not know was that Myra had grown up on a frontier colony, raided repeatedly by alien warbands. She had watched her family die, learned to survive, learned to fight. She had trained under veterans who taught her that size meant nothing when resolve was absolute. As the gong sounded, the arena shields flared, and the galaxy held its breath. Zarthun charged with earth-shattering force, each step cracking the arena floor. His blade came down in a crimson arc, meant to cleave Myra in half. She moved at the last instant, rolling beneath the strike as the blade screamed past her. Gasps rippled through the crowd. No one had ever dodged the first blow. Myra rose and fired a compact energy pulse from her wrist unit. The shot struck Zarthun's armor and dispersed harmlessly. The champion laughed again, louder this time. He swung again and again, each strike a storm of lethal precision. Myra did not try to overpower him. She observed, adapted, waited. She let him exhaust himself, letting rage guide his movements. Between blows, she whispered to herself, counting steps, angles, timing. Her instructors had taught her that champions fall not from strength, but from certainty. When Zarthun overextended, Myra darted forward and slammed a charged blade into a joint between his armor plates. Sparks erupted as the blade pierced deeper than expected. The champion roared in shock and pain, staggering back. Blood not red, but glowing violet spilled onto the arena floor. For the first time in centuries, Zarthun was wounded. The crowd fell silent, disbelief spreading like a shockwave. Zarthun's rage transformed into something colder, more dangerous. He activated his full combat protocols, armor shifting, weapons unfolding from his arms. Myra felt the pressure increase, gravity distort as alien technology bent the arena itself. Her breathing slowed, fear threatened to rise, but she crushed it. Fear was a luxury she could not afford. The champion unleashed a barrage of energy blades and concussive blasts. Myra sprinted, slid, vaulted over debris, her movements fluid and desperate. A blast caught her shoulder, sending her tumbling, pain flaring white-hot. Zarthun advanced, confident again, lifting his blade for the final strike. Myra lay still for half a second, then smiled. She triggered the device hidden at her waist. A human invention, simple, brutal, effective. An adaptive resonance charge tuned to alien armor frequencies. The explosion was not large, but it was precise. Zarthun's armor screamed as it destabilized, plates shattering outward. He fell to one knee, systems failing, strength bleeding away. The arena shook as the impossible happened. Zarthun tried to rise, but his legs betrayed him. Myra stood slowly, every muscle aching, blood dripping from her lip. She walked toward him, not in triumph, but with grim resolve. The champion looked up at her, confusion replacing arrogance. He spoke, his voice no longer amplified, asking what she was. Myra answered simply human. She deactivated her blade and placed it against his chest. The rules required confirmation of defeat, not death. Zarthun lowered his head, defeated. The arena erupted, not with cheers, but stunned chaos. Some aliens fled, others watched in awe. For the first time, the myth of invincibility had been shattered. The overseers declared the match concluded. Myra Hale of Earth named victor. As medical drones descended, Myra looked up at the stars beyond the arena shields. She thought of her lost colony, her family, and she whispered that this was for them. News spread across the galaxy faster than light. A human girl had defeated the undefeated champion. Empires recalculated, war councils convened, alliances shifted. Earth was no longer seen as weak. Humanity was no longer ignored. Myra returned home not as a conqueror, but as a symbol. A reminder that courage could rewrite destiny. Zarthun survived, stripped of his title, forced to confront a universe where dominance was no longer guaranteed. Some said he began teaching instead of fighting, warning others not to underestimate humanity. And in quiet moments, Myra trained others like her. Not to dominate, but to defend. Not to seek glory, but to ensure survival. The galaxy had learned a lesson written not in blood alone, but in resolve, adaptability, and the unbreakable will of a human girl. Long after the arena of the Silent Moons returned to orbit and the crowds dispersed to their distant systems, the echo of that battle did not fade. It lingered in council chambers carved from crystal and steel, in war rooms humming with ancient machines, and in the private thoughts of rulers who had never imagined fear. On Earth, Myra Hale was no longer just a name, she was a phenomenon. Feeds replayed her fight endlessly, frame by frame, her movements analyzed by tacticians and scholars alike. Children watched with wide eyes as a girl not much older than them faced a nightmare and refused to fall. Yet Myra herself found no peace in victory. When the cheers ended and the banners were lowered, she sat alone in quiet training halls, replaying the moments where she had nearly died. She remembered the heat of Zarthun's blade, the way the ground shook beneath his steps, the sound of alien laughter before the gong. Sleep came rarely. When it did, her dreams were not of glory, but of fire and loss. Her family still called to her across the void. The Galactic Council convened in emergency session, an event so rare that some species believed it myth. Delegates from thousands of worlds gathered, their forms as varied as imagination allowed. At the center floated a projection of the fight, paused at the moment Zarthun fell to one knee. Arguments erupted instantly. Some demanded sanctions against Earth, claiming the match had been manipulated. Others argued that humanity had exposed a fatal weakness in galactic combat doctrine. An elder of the Kellers spoke softly, yet silenced the chamber. It said that the universe had not changed, only perception had. That humans had always been dangerous, not because of strength, but because of adaptation. While politicians argued, other forces moved quietly. Mercenary guilds placed bounties on human combat data. Black market traders sold corrupted copies of Myra's training footage. Unknown fleets began repositioning near human space. Earth's military leaders understood the truth immediately. Victory had painted a target on their species. They did not celebrate, they prepared. Myra was summoned to a facility buried deep beneath Earth's surface. There she met others like her, survivors of alien raids, pilots, engineers, tacticians. They were forming something new, not an army, but a doctrine. They called it the Adaptive Defense Initiative, a philosophy built around rapid learning, asymmetrical response, and psychological resilience. Myra was not placed at its head. She refused the title. Instead, she became its heart, training, testing, breaking, and rebuilding those who volunteered. Across the stars, Zarthun recovered in exile. His armor lay dismantled, studded, stripped of legend. He was no longer feared, but he was no longer blind. The human girl haunted him. Not her blade, not her technology, but her stillness. She had faced death without hatred, without hesitation. When emissaries came to question him, he told them a truth they did not want to hear. That champions fall when they stop learning. That humans were not strong, they were relentless. Some listened, most did not. The first retaliation strike came months later. A fringe coalition attacked a human border colony, expecting swift surrender. They did not find farmers and diplomats. They found traps, countermeasures, and defenders who adapted mid-battle. Myra arrived after the fighting ended. She walked through ruined streets and helped survivors rebuild. To them, she was not a hero, she was proof that resistance mattered. Galactic media twisted the narrative. Some painted humanity as aggressors, others as inevitable conquerors. Myra watched none of it. She trained harder. She taught recruits to fight while injured, to think while afraid, to survive when alone. She told them that victory was not about winning, but about enduring. Years passed. Human influence spread not through conquest, but through presence. Trade routes shifted toward human space, minor species sought alliances. Not because humans promised safety, but because they had proven defiance. The arena of the silent moons reopened. New champions rose, new rules were written. No fighter entered without studying the human girl who had broken tradition. A statue was commissioned without Myra's consent. It depicted her not striking, but standing small against a towering foe. She never visited it. One day, a message arrived encoded in ancient combat script. It was from Zarthun. He requested a meeting, not as a warrior, but as a student. Myra hesitated, then agreed. They met on a neutral station overlooking a dying star. The former champion bowed, an act unthinkable before. He asked her how she had known she could win. Myra answered that she had not. She only knew she could not stop. That answer changed him more than defeat ever had. As decades passed, history books simplified the story. They spoke of the battle, the fall, the shock. They failed to capture the quiet aftermath, the discipline, the restraint. Myra aged. Scars multiplied, hair streaked with silver. Yet her eyes never lost their calm. When she finally stepped away from training, others carried her methods forward. Human pilots outmaneuvered larger fleets. Human engineers built systems designed to fail safely and recover faster. The galaxy adjusted, slowly, reluctantly. Power was no longer measured solely in firepower, but in flexibility. Empires that could not change collapsed under their own rigidity. In the end, Myra Hale did not become a ruler. She became a lesson, a living reminder etched into galactic consciousness. That the smallest figure can cast the longest shadow. That champions fall, but ideas endure. And that once, in a floating arena above a broken world, a human girl stood her ground, and the universe learned to hesitate. Time did what no enemy ever could. It slowed Myra Hale without breaking her. The galaxy she helped reshape now moved with a caution it had never known before. Where once fleets charged blindly, now they paused, analyzed, adapted. Myra lived far from capitals and councils. Her home was a modest station on the edge of human space, orbiting a quiet blue dwarf star. There she taught not soldiers alone, but thinkers, mediators, engineers, and explorers. She believed conflict began long before the first weapon fired. It began with misunderstanding, arrogance, and the refusal to listen. Students came from dozens of species. Some arrived fearful, others resentful, a few openly hostile. All carried the weight of the legend they were about to meet. Myra shattered that expectation immediately. She did not speak of the arena. She did not recount the fall of Zarthun. Instead, she asked questions. Why do you think you lost? Why do you think you won? What would you do if your enemy changed while you stayed the same? These questions unsettled even hardened veterans. They forced reflection rather than reaction. Learning replaced pride. Beyond the station, the galaxy remained unstable. Old empires fractured, new coalitions rose. Some tried to imitate humanity, copying weapons without understanding philosophy. Those efforts failed. Because adaptation could not be stolen, it had to be lived. One cycle, a delegation arrived from the arena of the Silent Moons. The overseers themselves, ancient beings bound by tradition. They asked Myra to advise them. The arena had become something else. No longer a place of execution, but of evolution. Combatants now trained to test limits rather than end lives. Myra agreed on one condition: that children would never fight there. That victory would never require death. The overseers accepted. For the first time, tradition bent without breaking. Zarthun visited once more, older, slower, unarmed. He watched a new generation spar. Not for dominance, but for understanding. He turned to Myra and admitted that his people had worshipped strength because they feared change. Myra answered that fear was universal, but surrender to it was a choice. Far away, a crisis began quietly. A stellar anomaly disrupted jump routes near a multi-species cluster. Fleets were stranded, supplies dwindled, panic spread. Where once war would have erupted, cooperation emerged instead. Human methods guided evacuation, shared command structures, adaptive logistics. Myra was not there, but her influence was. In decisions made calmly under pressure. The crisis passed. Lives were saved. Trust deepened. Historians later marked it as the moment the galaxy truly changed. Not because of a battle, but because of restraint. Myra felt her time nearing its end. Not with fear, but with acceptance. She recorded final lessons, not instructions, but principles. Stay curious. Question certainty. Never assume the universe owes you victory. When she passed, quietly without ceremony, the galaxy paused. Ships dimmed their lights, arenas fell silent, councils stood still. There was no monument grand enough to capture her legacy. So none was built. Instead, her name became a phrase spoken before impossible choices. What would Myra do? And across countless worlds, when the strong faced the small, when the old faced the new, when fear demanded surrender, the answer echoed softly, persistently. Adapt, endure, and stand your ground. And somewhere, in the endless dark between stars, the universe remembered the human girl who taught legends to listen.